There we go. Where that? Good afternoon.
Hello.
There we go.
All right, well, it looks like we have a quorum and it is 1 o'clock. So I'll start by reading the intro and then we can get into introductions. On March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law a supplemental budget bill, which among other things further extends temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. Any or all members of a public body may continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remains suspended. This meeting is being recorded. All votes must be taken with a roll call vote. We will begin the open session by having each remote member introduce themselves. I am Michael Marcucci. Let's start with Eileen.
I am Eileen Murphy.
Michael.
Michael Lapham-Festa.
Andrew.
Andrew Foster.
Megan.
Megan Sullivan.
Rob.
Rob Hagler, participating remotely.
Brent.
Brent Nelson, participating remotely.
Right. Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. And, oh, Christine, I'm sorry. Christine, I forget you're still a member of this committee. So Christine, would you like to introduce yourself, please? And let us know if you're in the location or if you're participating remotely. Everyone is waiting with bated breath to find out where you are.
I am Christine Freeweiler. I am participating remotely, and I am anxiously looking to be off this committee.
All right. Well, that makes two of us. All right. Let's see. We are scheduled, I think, to try to vote on the recommendations for the FY 2026 capital budget. I didn't get any emails or inquiries from anyone about particular items we wanted to talk about beyond those that were identified. So if anyone has particular items they'd like to talk about, let's identify those now so we can discuss them. Yeah, Megan.
Well, I had wanted to talk about the vehicle for Park and Rec. I think
that's already on the list. Yep.
Okay, great. Do we have a list somewhere? Okay, and also the IT budget for the schools, I'm still a little uncomfortable with. I just need to get a little bit more understanding about that. I'm sorry, I sent you an email, Mike and Frank, and I didn't follow up. And Mike LaFrancesca, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of it this morning to follow up on that, but that was a question.
All right, you want to start with the IT school budget? I do recall. I think you sent that to me, Megan, right? I think I recall.
I did. I did. My question is just about the budget, as the spending doesn't seem that the schools are spending all of the money within the year or encumbering it within the year. So I just wonder if it's a little too big, but in one way it's comfortable that it's not all spent, because that to me says you're not using it as a slush fund. But I wonder
yeah, Megan, I can answer that question. So if you look at the first 2 years where there was a balance, and then we paid for that, actually, I think it was like a year and a half after that year was closed. It could have been 2 years. The situation with that was, Megan, was we ordered or we encumbered the I think it would, I can't recall what exactly it was. I would have to ask Owen. So the material, the supplies that we needed, and it was on back order because of manufacturing, and they couldn't get certain supplies or parts to those supplies because they were coming in from, I believe it was China. And so they were delayed a year and a half from when we actually put the order in. So we couldn't close it out. We couldn't close out the PO. So then when the order was in and it was verified and checked, then we paid that out. So you will see that on that spreadsheet that the first, I believe, 2 years, which was right around or after COVID, that there was a delay in supplies. And if you look at last year, we did not spend all of the budget. it was, we put money aside for, I think it was security cameras. It was the same issue with that, where the type of security cameras that we were trying to order were on back order. So, you know, instead of just ordering another camera, we left that amount open and waited for the inventory to come in for that. Owen's very good with making sure that, you know, he doesn't just either over order or and that if there's money left over, that we don't just spend it to spend it. You know, sometimes the pricing that is quoted gets decreased, and instead of ordering more of, let's say it's, you know, a projector or whatever it is, we leave that money into that account. You know, and then, you know, what we've done in the past, and Christine, you know, can verify this, is we go through all the open items. We check with department heads to see if we can close that out and put those dollars back into the accounts. So, you know, Owen can speak, you know, better about what the actual, you know, materials or supplies that we ordered that were back ordered. But that is the backstory behind that.
Do you know how much is encumbered for the year to date?
So far,
Yep,
yeah, I can actually look it up for you right now.
because as of this, as November 1st, it had only been like $1,200 for the current year.
No, because there was two big orders that just went in to replace two servers. Andrew, do you have that account? Do you want to pull it up quickly?
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up right now.
So you said that the end of last year, it was the security cameras that got.
Last year,
deferred
the
over.
security
Yeah.
cameras, correct. Um,
I have at least the IT from this past town meeting. I've got 25,000 spent and about $144 in encumbrances.
correct, yeah.
$144 or 144,000?
144.
So on a $300,000 budget.
We have 274,000 unencumbered.
Mhm.
Currently, yeah. And I know that he was working with his vendors to get quotes for were the servers put in, Andrew?
Servers,
Yeah.
let me see what we have paid out of there. I have about $24,000 in Wally Computer and $1,100 in Swift Education Systems.
Yeah, so the servers haven't been put in yet then.
I've got whatever a Power Edge R750XS. That's the thing for 24,000. I don't know what it is.
Yep. So Megan, he's probably still getting quotes for those.
Okay.
And as soon as they come in, I can absolutely send them to you.
My observation without knowing all those details is that, you know, 5 months into the year, if we've only spent $25,000, it seems like $300,000 is probably more than we need. So looking ahead 1 year, that was just my question.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. I wish he was here. I know he's out of the
Yeah.
country right
I
now.
wish I'd remembered.
Yeah, no, he's out of the country right now, but you know, when he gets back, if you want, we can meet and have a meeting, and he can go over that with you.
So Megan, are you proposing to hold off on approving that number till we have more information? Are you proposing we lower the number? Is there a
I wonder what
request on
everybody
that front?
else, I wonder what anybody else thinks. I know we're trying to put this behind us, and my questions this morning aren't that helpful, but I do appreciate, Michael, that there is a balance at the end of the year, and you know that it isn't, because I was saying that's also reassuring, because it's not a slush fund that you're trying to just spend. So I appreciated that. It was just an observation. I wonder what my colleagues think.
So I think it doesn't bother me that we're 5 months in if we haven't spent it, because if he's planning on a large IT purchase, I believe he does those right before school gets out, and then he spends the summer implementing those. So the timing wise of not having spent it yet doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'll echo that because it's not easy to set those up at all. So I can understand the timing on that.
Yeah. And if you can attribute the 87 to the cameras, that makes sense too. That it wasn't just unspent.
Yeah, so it like I said, it was this particular 360 camera, and they were for the middle school and the high school parking lots. So
So we can see who throws trash.
definitely can.
My pet peeve walking through there at night.
This is Rob. I had one question that are about the tennis courts. And I don't know if this was I think it's been about a month since we had our last meeting. And I think there was a question, and I seem to recall in emails that there was a question about the tennis courts, and was there an unanswered question from the previous meetings regarding the financing of that, or is capital stabilization, excuse me, or is the revolving fund for parks and recreation going to basically cover the total cost of that project?
I
Katie
know we-
Walper, the Director of Parks and Recreation, is here. I can allow her to speak to that.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear
Yep.
you.
Hi, Katie. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? So tennis courts we are not able to fund it. We were looking at kind of a joint effort between the first time we presented and last time we presented. We're having more issues with our tennis courts. We couldn't identify if it was wear and tear or possibly vandalism. But we cannot fund this project solely from Park and Recreation. And given the circumstances of what has happened with the FAF and needs for strategic planning as well as an SUV, those projects would be before our tennis courts because of how much the price tag overall that is.
Okay. I mean, does that mean that this is something that would have to wait in terms of presentation, say to a warrant committee until the next fiscal year?
We are hopeful that it was going to be this year. There's a couple of issues with the tennis courts. One, companies are booking out 6 to 9 months, if not a full calendar year, to do a whole remodel of a resurfacing of courts. Our current conditions are poor. We had a seal coating company come out over the summer to take a look at it. And similar to other situations, these tennis courts have seen the better life of them. So it was recommended over a year ago for these courts to be completely redone. We have resurfaced it and we have done seal coating for the cracks. It's just continuing to deteriorate, especially given the circumstances of living in New England. They're in rough shape. And so we are concerned if it keeps getting pushed off, they were not going to be playable. And we would probably have to look at not hosting high school athletics and or closing tennis courts due to the cracking and how much it would cost us to keep up with the cracking.
Is the total project $500,000?
Yeah, so it was upwards to now so we bases off our numbers from the school project that had been done, as well as the square footage of like a basketball court that has been redone with the town recently. So it could be upwards to $550,000 from when we first did this project quote. So it is an expensive endeavor. And when I talk to, and I'm drawing a blank on the tennis courts that help with Lexington's remodel, just like everything else, prices are continuing to rise.
Okay. Does that suggest that this wouldn't really be an issue to be decided anytime in the near future?
No, I think it's a request for this year. Right, that's right,
It
right,
is.
Frank? This is a request for this year.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
but just in looking at the breakdown, it looks like most of it, unless I'm doing the math wrong, most of it is proposed to come from, I guess I'm trying to figure out, I think Rob's trying to understand the allocation between the capital stabilization fund and because on the Parks and Recreation revolving fund, because on the chart on the second to last page, we've got two separate lines and we just have that 500 as a joint. So Frank, what's the breakdown within the 500 as between the two?
So when we got the request, that was how it was listed, and I don't believe that when Parks and Rec came before the committee in, I'm going to guess, September or October, that a specific split was proposed. I could be mistaken. Katie, please, by all means, tell me if I'm wrong. But I know that there were some things thrown around between the town fundraising and the capital stabilization fund, the Parks and Rec revolving fund, and fundraising, but I'm not sure there was an exact dollar figures assigned to either of those.
Hey, can you shed any light on that? How much the revolving fund would be contributing to the resurfacing?
So I think that has changed recently. There's a lot of moving pieces with Park and Recreation right now, as far as what our revolving account might need to help with in the interim of not having a place. So I think that is a discussion that is being discussed in our meeting next Wednesday. I think, in short, the way that today's meeting is running is a lot of questions will be answered after the meeting at 3 p.m. today to figure out what money is being allocated for rent or modulars and whatnot for a temporary home for Park and Recreation. I think that's where we're kind of in limbo. And another thing we're currently having, because we don't have the building anymore, having to cancel programming. So we are already starting to see some of our revenues that we're able to generate not being able to come in.
So it's
So it
kind of
sounds
safe
to
to say
me
that,
like we ought to do, oh, go ahead, Eileen.
well, I was just gonna say, man, when I look at this, kind of safe to say the whole card discussion should be off the table. Like that's $40,000 that doesn't need to be spent in 2026. When we look at some things that are bumped to the front of the line. And so, I mean, I hope that's what we're looking at in the big picture is what really needs to be done, what's a nice to have, but not going to be necessary as we look at some of the hurdles that the town has ahead of it over the next 12 to 24 months. I'll just put that on the table.
You talking about the car?
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
was-
a tab, but not something that should be spent when we have all these other things coming at us for Parks and Rec right now.
I was
certainly agree with
actually,
that.
yeah, I was actually feeling like maybe even now more than before because of the Park and Rec situation and that Katie has to go around to a lot of different places. That was
Yes.
almost more of a reason to have
Yeah, so
a reliable vehicle to do that, but
I
Yeah,
also
so Park
appreciate-
and Recreation met in November in regards to the vehicle, and that's what the commission was in favor of. So currently, right now, just to give you a snapshot of our last month, we've relocated 34 programs between January and May, which is not even our busy season. We are now relocating 66 programs that don't cover our field trips. So more so now, and I did a lot of thinking about this SUV before the FAF was closed. The commission did vote that they were in favor of the vehicle. I don't know if Mel is on it, on the call right now. He was trying to get on, but the governing commission has voted that there was a need for it before the FAF closed. Then after the FAF closed, it was now discussed in November, even more so of a need. And I can give you a couple of things that I took away from our first meeting and to bring it to this meeting is that looking at our winter programming, the SUV could be used 3 out of the 5 days, if not 4 out of the 7 days, because we do weekend programming. We have our ski club, we have our special events, we have our basketball program. All of these would be needed for that SUV. I did look into the research per our last meeting. Our black van is not capable of taking rows out. The white van is able to take only the back rows out, which would not give us enough space. I'll give you a prime example of last night. We had our Pictures with Santa event. We got about, I would say, 13 loads of baskets full of food pantry. And then our staff was needed to take our personal vehicles to put the food in because the van couldn't fit it. And then we were kind of once again at the mercy of our staff using their personal vehicles. And then when talking to other park and recreation departments in regards to what we had talked about in September, I think we're actually the first department to present. When we talk about reimbursement for mileage, we're talking about the mileage. And what we see in park and recreation is when we are doing tows of, for example, these are current things we're thinking about is our speaker system, our picture backdrops, our programming for outdoor events. Like if we spill hot chocolate going to our special event in a personal vehicle, then we are now responsible to clean our personal vehicle. So it's not really a viable source for us to need our personal vehicles. But that was also just talking about the wear and tear of like, if something was to rip the cloth of one of my coworkers' cars, like what does that look like? So sorry for going a little on, but it is needed. So like we are currently off of 6 locations. We have multiple programming going off at the same time. So Tuesday nights we're at the COA at the same time we're at public safety, and then we have a class going on at the UCC. So we are now taking more personal vehicles to go and do all of these because the vans aren't adequate for that need of that program.
So the way you say that makes me sound like you need 3 SUVs if you're going to all of these different locations.
Oh, we did talk about that. Like not after the recreation meeting that we had, I had talked to Mel about we have a bigger need for vehicles given the pivot that we're given. And so we think that some of the programs we can take a van to. So if we don't need to load up a van full of like an inflatable Gaga pit and stuff like that, it doesn't seem like it's a huge endeavor, one, to get it loaded into the vans because the seats don't come down. But then at the same time, we can go, okay, say we had the SUV. I did talk to Mel. This was recent within the last 2 weeks about renting an SUV in the short term because of all the moving pieces we currently have. I don't feel that right now that is our priority. We're making it with our current van and personal vehicles. And our staff is tracking their vehicles to be reimbursed for their mileage.
And Andrew, what's the current IRS reimbursement rate?
I think it's 67 and a half, I think.
It is.
Katie, how much does one vehicle help you? Does it help you? Do you still have people using personal cars? So you still have the same issues or not?
For right now, yes. But I think when we're moving forward, obviously, with finding Park and Recreation a home, like if you look at myself and two of my coworkers' cars right now, because we don't really have a office space, we have all of our supplies there. The town, we have been able to store a few things in the warrant room, but that's more of like your staplers, your everyday needs. But like, I think what's important is, like, I'll give an example of coming up on Saturday the 14th. We have a kids' night out that's now hosted at the UCC church. They can't hold our stuff here on Friday or the day before, so we got to move all of our stuff. We're able to run, like, at times to get the supplies we need out of the FAF, but once they're out, we don't put it back in the FAF, but then we're leaving it in our personal car because there's nowhere to put it temporarily. But I think we're moving forward, like we are going to find some storage space. I think that's going to help at our 3:00 meeting today. Like the town has been doing a great job figuring out the next steps. It's just right now, having a smaller SUV would help us, that all the stuff from Pictures with Santa last night wouldn't be sitting in my car, could be sitting in the SUV.
So can I come in real quick and ask a question? I asked this when I was at the Council on Aging a couple weeks ago. They have a new minivan. Because when I think of Parks and Rec, it's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many, right? So when you're driving around and you're loading things in, an SUV is really not that roomy because you've got a very low roof. But if you look at a minivan, the newer minivans, and I was asking the gentleman that drives for COA, the newer one has got all sorts of versatility. So if we're looking, I just, as a town taxpayer, I look at if we're going to be seeing a department spend their money, it should be one-to-many for a department that actually serves one-to-many, not one-on-one. So I look at this, knowing what's ahead with having to address the new building, knowing that realistically, I think we're gonna end up losing some programs because it is what it is. We don't have the Fast Center to fall back on. We don't have a location. Hopefully you'll get a trailer within the next few weeks, and that way you have a headquarters that keeps everybody in one place with some storage. So just throwing that out there to the group.
Any other questions or comments here? I mean, I have to say, I still remain skeptical of this one, just given the number of moving parts and issues and further things to be decided with respect to the vehicle. And I think with respect to the tennis courts, I don't think we can act on that since we don't really have an exact number we're being asked to approve. Obviously, if we were to add $500,000 to the request to the capital stabilization fund, that would be a 50% increase essentially on what we were planning to use the capital stabilization fund for this year. I fully appreciate, Katie, that you're not in a position to give us an answer given everything else that's going on with the department. And so I'm in agreement that we should resurface the tennis courts. They get a lot of use and we should keep them up, but without knowing exactly what we're being asked to do here, I'm not sure we can approve it. And I would say the same thing as with respect to the car. I mean, I get the case for doing it, but it does seem like there's still a number of things to be figured out before we know the exact use case for all of this. So I'd be inclined to not include either of those on this year's request. We could obviously revisit it if there's going to be some sort of comprehensive plan for Parks and Rec and the use of the revolving fund. I think it could be re-examined at that time. I think the issues of the FAF are a kind of extenuating factor that would take us out of the schedule plan for the capital budget under the town's financial policies. But I would not be inclined to approve either of these right now. But it wouldn't be a definitive no, subject to having to fund the plan for the department going forward.
Mike, can we put those items on hold? Because I know I thought I heard Katie say that there's a 3:00 meeting on what the next steps are for the Parks and Recs. So
Yeah,
can-
that's what I'm suggesting. I think we could revisit it later in the budget cycle, just given the extenuating circumstances. I think we should try to approve as much of this budget as we can today so that we can get it off to the warrant committee and move the process forward, particularly given, how difficult it's been to get this committee together.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. I think we would have to revisit it after they have more information about, what their next steps are with what's going on with the department. And we have plenty of time between now and town meeting to come back together.
I just want to make a note. I did talk to Mel about this with the SUV, is that Park and Recreation Commission did vote in favor for this, but also we felt this before that the FAF building was closed, and that we feel that it's even more needed now that it's closed. So I think for us, it's just one of those things, like, I wish I could take a camera and videotape what we're currently doing, and that's the problem that's not going to be going away. And like, we also need that SUV a lot. Like, we didn't even discuss the summer, but I just wanted to bring that. I know Mel was trying to get on, but that is something that he wanted me to bring up in regards to that. The commission is in favor of this.
Was it unanimous?
4-1. And the one person that I talked to after more conversations and talking about other park and recreations that are similar to us with the similar fleet, they can't change their vote, but they were then like, okay, I can see why that would be needed.
Katie, that commissioner in question called me today to say that she wanted it on the record that she did not support this purchase.
Yep.
Okay.
So do we all agree then we're going to defer these two items, and we can revisit them down the line, in advance of the publication of the warrant report? Because I'll just note that if we were to fund the full amount of the tennis court resurfacing from the capital stabilization, that'd be about half of our remaining balance after the other appropriations. So, and again, which is not to say reason not to do it, but as of now, we have about a $1.1 million remaining balance after what's projected to be spent from this budget. And so if we added 500 of that, it would be about half that amount.
Big amount. Is anything like that ever its own warrant article? That big?
I don't think it would be as a capital project. It would be a capital.
Yeah.
Unless this was proposed to be funded from somewhere other than the capital budget. I mean, it's obviously a legitimate capital project. I mean, it's within the ambit of the capital budget. That's kind of where it belongs. Just that for this late in the project to have it be added on top of, we're looking at 988 in appropriations from the capital stabilization fund. So to add 50% to that in the last piece here is a lot. Not to say we shouldn't do it, but why don't we find out what's going to happen with Parks and Rec, and we can revisit at some point. Is everyone okay with that?
I think that makes the most sense.
All right. So looking down now, if we can look down at the.
I have one more question of Katie. So Katie, in the light of everything, is the $40,000 that you're planning to spend on your strategic planning, like, is that enough now?
Yeah, so, yep. So we got a quote from one of the strategic plans. We also, in 2018, were allocated funds, and Andrew, I think, could pull up the article in regards to, we have entered in a contract prior to me getting here with the facility building that has a line that we're contracted in for $99,000. The current, and Andrew would have more specifics, but I'm pretty sure we have spent out of that $99,000, 33 or 34,000 of that dollars. So if but it also could be for a strategic plan, but we have to go through the Hunden report that it's also connected to that. It's a kind of a multi-purpose capital from 2018. So the commission, given the circumstances, are going to have Hunden update the report from where everything, and then as well as if there might be some money left over of the 110,000 that would be able to hold over if the 40,000 fell short.
What is the goal of the strategic plan?
The goal is to help with the projections of programming aligning with our open enrollment as our open space and recreation plan, to work hand in hand with that, as well as the study that was done but were outdated in 2018. So now that they can all communicate to each other, and I think this is a great thing that we already have some of the legwork done in 2018 to now update of what the future could look like in park and recreation. So we kind of already have the ducks in a row when it comes to the backing of a new center, so that the strategic plan could also work hand in hand with open space and recreation plan, as well as the Hunden report that was done for a new feasibility study.
Question on that, and Christine, I'll throw it to you. Just so we know that, and this has been going on. I even went to the Parks and Rec meeting in June and asked, like, where are you guys at looking at a new building? And I believe a month or so later, a comment came back to you about looking for a consultant to look at help design and what would a new building look like. So where does that funding fall? Because at some point, we're going to have to look at what does a new building look like? And would we be working with a design consultant for that?
I'm pretty sure we already have that. So that was done, and that is part of the contract that the town entered. So to my understanding, when the Dale Street project was happening simultaneously, Park and Recreation went and got, Andrew, can you speak on that article of 2018?
Yeah, so it was Article 14 of the 2018 town meeting. They were given $150,000 to start a feasibility study, to essentially plan on potentially building a new park and rec center. They spent about 40 grand of it, and they have 110,000 left that has not been spent.
But we're in a contract of $99,000 with that company, which is I would either Abacus, ABACUS, or Hunden. So part of that money now is Hunden is going to update that plan, which has nothing to do with the strategic plan. So it's the feasibility study of a new building. So there will be a little bit of money left over to update that plan that is different than Abacus. So Abacus, I believe, is the contract we're in for $99,000, and we have spent to date $34,000 of that $99,000 that we're required to pay.
So you're talking about 55,000.
Can I just ask just want to make sure I heard that correctly. We signed a contract in 2018 and we're still obligated to work with that company from 2018?
We can terminate a contract at any time.
Okay. Because if they, obviously the contract has not been fulfilled, so whatever money may be outstanding, we're not obligated to do with these folks. Okay.
I believe we explored the termination clause of those contracts at length at the select board meeting last night.
Maybe I hate to say this, but do you want us to do the 40 now, or you want us to think about all of this together the next time?
Yeah, I feel like, so the strategic plan needs to be done. Is it opportunity to wait for a couple of weeks to come and look at this full scope? I think the dominoes need to fall right now in regards to the building, the temporary building, as well as figuring how to terminate that contract. That is, I just have an email from the company of what we're contracted in. So in short, if we could, is this group going to meet again? Because it sounds like we're going to meet again regardless. And that way also we would be able to say this, and this is what we can do.
Sorry, so you're looking for the strategic plan money to come from the capital stabilization fund and not the revolving fund then?
Yeah,
I mean, it's listed as coming from the revolving fund.
Yeah.
coming from revolving.
I mean, I don't see that request as necessarily connected to the other two, and that it's a longer term item. But again, the same issue comes up in that it's a variety of moving pieces, and if that gets pushed off to next year or to a different budget cycle to use the revolving fund for other more pressing needs, that may happen as well. So if we're going to have to meet again to talk about Parks and Rec capital budget requests, maybe we just do it all together, talking with the Parks and Rec capital budget requests all together in a further meeting.
I think we're like, I can say I'm supportive of this. Of course, it needs to happen. Just think in the whole context of all the moving pieces, we might just be better informed and you could know about the other contract and what the total cost of what you want to do might be.
And next meeting, I think we may hear hopefully thumbs up from MSBA, so we know actually what may be happening from a funding standpoint for the school.
Right.
Which is a very large nut coming at the town. That we're doing for a new Parks and Rec Center.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a consensus to defer the 3 Parks and Rec items to a further meeting, probably in January, most likely at this point. Does anyone object to deferring those 3 items?
No.
And then, so looking at and Katie, thank you very much for hopping in on this. And we'll talk again, and good luck with all the stuff you're doing. I appreciate the efforts you're making to hold this thing together.
Thanks.
So if we look then now at the FY 2026 request column of the capital improvement plan spreadsheet, that's what we're looking to vote on today, with removing the 3 Parks and Rec requests. So listed as Parks 13, Parks 14, and Parks 15 for the Metacom and tennis courts, the small SUV for the department, and strategic planning consultant. Does anyone want to discuss any of the other items in that FY 2026 request line?
Mike, I do just want to make one quick point, if that's okay. There was a lot of moving pieces this week and last night with the ARPA expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
I can share my screen really quick. I had sent out a breakdown of the ARPA spending, which I can redistribute, probably a little bit easier to read. But on this roll forward analysis that I had sent around, that showed, I think, around 420,000 being available for an ARPA offset for to be closed, basically capital articles that would be eligible to close back into the capital stabilization fund because we would have spent the money out of ARPA. That money, after speaking with the police chief and Mo, there are some items that we think we'll definitely be able to pay for before town meeting. So this number in column F is now up to 523,000, which gives us a slightly higher projected balance of 1.2 million if the full 988 is spent.
Okay. That is helpful. And just as we think about this going forward, it does mean that we do have some room in the stabilization fund budget to cover a lot of the tennis court resurfacing. But one question will be, and this will be a question for the warrant committee, is whether the warrant committee intends to recommend another free cash deposit to the stabilization fund this year for town meeting or not. I know there was some discussion, maybe not, or maybe that would be adjusted or the number might be different, but that's something for the warrant committee to figure out and come back to us on what the recommendation will be. Because I noticed, Frank, you don't have any amount factored in for the FY 27 deposit, right? So at least as of the moment, we'd anticipate the that fund being exhausted if it's not replenished in FY 27. Although there is, I assume that 850 number is the estimate the warrant committee is likely to recommend for FY 26 for this year's town meeting. So, okay.
That was a number. Yeah.
All right. So if
I have
there's,
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, this is Rob. I just had a quick question on the, excuse me, on the ARPA offset.
Mhm.
In there was the summary of the ARPA fundings that were made in the past, or up through I think fiscal 24.
Mhm.
It looked as if there was a remaining allocation out of the 700,000 allocation. There was a remaining allocation of 126.
Yes.
Right?
So
Or
Yeah.
go ahead.
Frank.
yeah, so I reformatted things a bit to make it a little bit more clear. And again, we did have some updates from the chief and Mo at DPW about items that we could spend. So I'll plan on redistributing this version of the ARPA summary, which will show that the total treasury ARPA, of which we've been allocated $700,000 from the select board to spend on capital. We have spent or have committed 689,000 of that. Those two additions that weren't included on the spreadsheet that I distributed earlier this morning were the roughly $35,000 for the recycling compactor, and then the $80,000 on tasers. We anticipate that those will be paid for before town meeting, probably much sooner than that. So that is the roughly $115,000 difference that you would see. So that gets us to the total of $689,055 that have or will have been spent out of the Treasury ARPA allocation that the select board had approved for capital expenditures, again, for a total of $700,000.
And I have an idea for that remaining about $11,000.
So I think,
Okay. So
Did
this,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so those two projects, the recycling compactor and tasers, are things we approved for purchase out of FY 25. And instead of using capitalization stabilization fund, we're able to use ARPA.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So go ahead.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
So the screen you just showed us before the screen that we see now, are those are both the current spreadsheets then?
Yes. So this is the one that I probably updated about an hour ago,
Okay.
or maybe 2 hours ago at this point, because I did it before the meeting.
Okay.
Again, the changes would be these two items at the bottom here. I don't know if you can see the ones I've highlighted,
Yep.
but it's the 80,000 and the 34,000.
Okay. Have you sent that to us at this point, or?
I have not. No, I will send it right after we wrap up.
Okay. Thanks.
But just while I have a moment, the remaining $11,000, I would like to put towards the OpenGov project that we started last year. We're in the implementation phase now, and we have found that the GIS company that we currently utilize to do our online mapping was sold to a larger company, and their response to this integration has been less than stellar. We're really fighting with them to do any updating or anything else. I would like to transition to a new GIS company. I just had a presentation this week, and full implementation for the first year is approximately between $10,000 and $11,000.
Are you proposing that for FY 26 or FY 25? As soon as
I'm
possible?
proposing that we use the ARPA money to cover that $11,000, which would not need an appropriation at town meeting.
Mike Marcucci, how do you feel about that? I think you don't like new expenses coming in, but it seems like
I think
extenuating.
it's a new expense, but it's related, sorry, I'm sorry, Megan, new expense, but related to an existing funded project.
Yeah, and we might as well use the ARPA money while we have it, right? So,
We have
Because
3
we
weeks left.
so we might as well use it rather than lose it. So that makes sense to me.
Okay.
All right, anything else now on the FY 2026 column on the spreadsheet? So if you look on, there's the spreadsheet, the FY 2026 to FY 2030 capital improvement plan. Does anyone want to discuss any of the items that are in the FY 2026 request column, already having removed the 3 Parks and Rec items from that column? So consider those not included in this discussion.
Hi, I just have a question. It goes back to the IT breakdown.
Sure.
It's not germane to the vote per se, but I have to provide information to the warrant committee next week. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So at the end of fiscal year 24, we had a listing of all the turnbacks. There's a line item for information technology, and it listed $3,500 turned back. And should I interpret that to be money that was allocated for salary? It's not part of the $300,000 that we had allocated. I'm just trying to make the numbers add up in my head. Are all the money going?
Are you talking about the operating budget?
Well, that's what I think I'm talking about. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. That's so so for example, at the end of fiscal year 24, it was listed at $3,500. Under the line item of information technology was turned back. The previous year, 23, it was about 1,100 and so forth. So I'm assuming that's, yeah, the operations, which is essentially salary. And I just wanted to make sure I've got that correct.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
have to-
Is
I'd
that
have to
on the
look-
top side?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Brent. I need to know whether or not you're looking at the town side turn back or a school side turn back.
Here, I can pull up the,
List, it just says information technology. So
So I think, Christine, it has to be on the town side, because on the school side, it
You'd
would
be
be,
you'd be a single line item turn back for your.
Correct.
So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm looking in here. So for 2024, we had about $3,500 in operating budget that was turned back in the town's IT. Is that what you're referring to?
So if you are allocated $300,000 to spend, and in the fiscal year spend $297,000, does that mean that $3,000 remains in the capital stabilization fund at the end of the fiscal year?
So these are special articles. So the $300,000, it's money taken out of the stabilization and kept separately, and until it is spent, or until we decide to close it, it'll carry forward year after year until it's spent.
Okay, that's good to know. But then, okay, that's fine. That's good. That's enough.
Yeah, I think the turnbacks, Brent, you're talking about are not capital budget
Right.
turnbacks.
That's
They're
what
operating budget turnbacks. So it wouldn't relate to this. In order to, typically what we do with leftover money with the capital budget is we will reallocate it to similar requests. And so after a certain number of years, if the money doesn't get spent and it's just sitting there, we will then take that money and use that as a source of funds. And so typically for the same department, if we haven't spent, $20,000 that was originally allocated for a car we haven't purchased, we decide we don't need, we will do that periodically. We'll sort of reallocate those back as a source for future capital expenditures, but that would not appear as an annual turnback.
Okay, that's what I assumed. I just want to make sure that, so I haven't given the spreadsheet that you've provided us to the warrant committee because I myself don't fully understand each and every dollar and cent in it, to be honest. And so I don't want to provide it if I can't explain it and answer questions on it. So I'm just trying to make sure there isn't some constantly aggregating dollar amount year after year after year that's been accumulated because we haven't been spending the $300,000 each year. But in fact, I just want to make sure that we're close to hitting $300,000 per year. I see basically 2 years worth here. So I'm just assuming that if we go back in time, that this has been representative of how much we're spending per year from this allocation. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, this goes to the question that Megan raised earlier
Exactly.
about the budget. And I think that I thought, Megan, that you were ultimately satisfied with the answer that we're not overshooting this by $100,000. We might be overshooting it by a bit, but that over the course of time, it seems like if you're smoothing it over a 4 or 5 year period, it seems like $300,000 has been roughly accurate, right? It's not spending exactly $300,000, but we haven't had to come back and go over it. And I think to Brent's point, I don't think we've accumulated. It's not like we've accumulated $100,000 in unspent funds, right? I mean, depending on the timing of invoicing and the timing of what implementation, the projects don't always happen on a municipal fiscal year schedule, but that more or less we are right on target. And I think if we were to lower it, we're talking about lowering it to 275 or 250. It's not like we're lowering it to 100. Is that consistent with your assessment of the situation? You're on mute.
Yes. And I think a good way to approach this is to just be cognizant of it a year from now or at the request process and just have a look at what was left at the end of the year and what items might be to just confirm that the 300,000 is a good number. But I think the security cameras and everything, it seems to make sense. That's all. The timing of the spending, so.
Yeah, I think we should review, it should be part of the annual process that we review what this was spent on, because unlike a lot of the other requests, it's not particular to specific items. And I think when we originally came up with this concept for a fixed amount, it was with the recognition that IT was different than other things and that stuff wears out and needs to be replaced at somewhat unpredictable rates. And there needed to be some measure of flexibility to keep up with these systems and adjust as needed. And it was very hard to follow a municipal procurement process where you're really starting a budget process potentially 18 months before you might need to buy something to hit the mark exactly and say we're going to buy 84 of these particular servers or this particular date, when in the interim you might have something comes out that replaces that, and so the thing you would have budgeted for in advance just doesn't exist anymore, right? You have to find something that offers a similar thing. So let's keep looking at it. In the absence of a motion to lower that amount, I think we should include the $300,000 as the amount that we're going to vote on as part of the request for this year. But obviously, if it turns out we don't need it, we might as well revisit that. But I think it's a number that's intended to reflect costs over a period of time, recognizing that in that area we're at the mercy of a lot of forces beyond our control. And it's not as easy to figure out how long some of this stuff will last as compared to a dump truck because unlike a dump truck, Ford can't come out and decide halfway through the expected useful life of a dump truck that they're simply going to stop allowing it to start anymore unless you buy a new dump truck. Whereas with respect to the way pricing for IT services has changed, that's essentially what a lot of these technology companies will do, is they simply will decide in the middle of what should be the useful advice of what is a capital investment. Gee, it's just, you have to buy a new one now, or you have to pay us again every month for the privilege of having this. So, and that was one of the things that led to this as well.
Mike, I can give you a great example. So we have an engineering lab at the high school where we were informed that the license for those machines will expire in 3 months. And after that, the software on it won't work any longer. And, so that's just an example of what you were talking about, that, scrambling to try to get, 20 new machines for the students for an engineering lab just because they decided that, it's, the end of its life came.
Right. Well, the good thing is they can't do that with books made out of paper. So you get to keep them forever and read them as many times as you'd like. All right. Any other questions, comments, discussions on the FY 2026 request column of the spreadsheet? Okay. So again, removing the 3 Parks and Rec operations, I suggest that we simply vote this collectively. to recommend the budget items in the FY 2026 request columns. I don't think I've heard any objections to any particular line items to warrant a line by line vote. So is there a motion to recommend as most of the FY 2026 capital budget, the items listed in the FY 2026 request column of the FY 2026 to FY 2030 capital improvement plan spreadsheet?
Yes.
I think that is a motion from Megan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
All right, and the second, all right, roll call vote, starting with Christine,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Eileen,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Rob.
yes.
All right, and I vote yes as well. And Christine and Frank, why don't we see what happens with the Parks and Rec
Mhm.
moving parts here, and then we can look, and Brent, after the warrant committee takes a look at this, and you can let the warrant committee know what we did with respect to those Parks and Rec requests. And if the committee has a date by which they'd like us to be back to them on those 3 requests, we'll try to meet that. Recognize that it's likely that our next meeting will happen in January. The only other item on our agenda is other informational items. Frank, are there any other informational items?
Well, at some point, it sounds like probably in January, in addition to regrouping on Parks and Rec, we'll need to regroup with the facilities team and review proposals for expenditures out of the municipal building stabilization fund as well. And we do have I forget if Rob had started by the time we last met, but we do have a new facilities director on board, Robert Quinn, who hasn't been super busy at all with, but he's ready to dive in, and we've all met. Michael, myself, Christine, Rob, and the rest of the facilities team have met to start preparing those recommendations.
I think if we could move that meeting to January, because we will also find out towards the end of December what our capital expenditure will be for the Norfolk County School as well. So I think if we wait till January, we'll have that information.
Do you think it would be helpful to try and pick a time while we're all together?
I know Frank would love it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm not available the first week in January. So.
Who has the most constraints? Does someone teach? Does Brent do teach?
But I'm wide open the week of the 13th. I bet your Brent's not necessarily back in school yet at that point.
Yeah, I have a teaching release next semester, so more free.
All right. Well, we've generally met on Thursdays for the when we can. So how about Thursday, January 16th at 9:30? Can I start the bidding there?
Yes.
Yes.
That works.
Yes.
That works.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Looks like our next meeting will be Thursday, January 16th at 9:30. Frank, you better get that calendar invite out ASAP to lock that down for all of us. But good, very good suggestion. And we can avoid the doodle poll and the very high chance that I won't see half the dates that are too far to the right of the screen. So capital budget meeting, 9:30 a.m. Thursday, January 16th, 2025.
I'm gonna hold an hour and a half. Just for fun.
All right. Well, Frank will decide. He'll get the invitation out. However long the invitation is, that's what I'll be holding. So,
Awesome.
but I have a placeholder on there already in case Frank, is a little slow on the calendar invite.
I'm
So,
doing it right now, I promise.
all right. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second. All right. Brent,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Eileen,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you all. We're adjourned. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.